All right, everyone, there's some happy news, which is, that 300 million a year we give to Pakistan, we're not giving them the 300 million because in the Pentagon's words, they haven't made sufficient progress suppressing some of these militant movements within their country. Now, you've got several problems. The first is corruption. That is that parts of the Pakistani government are pro-militant, which means that they don't want to suppress these groups. The other problem is you've got this case in developing nations. You'll have an urban core of the country that the government controls, it's reasonably developed, it's, marginally wealthy. You go anywhere else in the country, it's like here in the United States, we're post-industrial, so there's an inversion. People who are more wealthy don't live in the middle of an inner city. That's not the case. If you go to Pakistan or India or something, you're going to find wealthy people primarily in urban areas. Therefore, the vast bulk of the country that's outlying, that's not part of one of those big cities, it's rural, it's farmland, it's wilderness, caves, or small villages, those aren't really under the government's control as easily. The government cannot watch all of these areas at once. It doesn't have the economic means to usually do so, and local officials are very, very often corrupt. This is even the case in Eastern Europe. I had a professor once at UVM talk about this, going to Ukraine and saying, yeah, if you're like in Kiev or something, it's pretty good. If you go to some of these small towns, you can bet that you're going to be written up for some non-existent law and you're going to have to pass a fiver to the, the gendarme, basically. You're going to have to give him a bottle of vodka or something else because that's the economics of the situation. A lot of low-level simmering corruption. There's a lot of low-level simmering crime. If you're a tourist there and you get robbed, yeah, the cop that you go to complain might be in on it. For all you know, they're probably getting a cut of it. That can be the way that it happens in certain parts of the developing world. That is, areas that have development, but they haven't developed fully in the political sense. That is, the centralized government can't control everything. And of course, there's not enough economic power to go around. There's a lot of systemic poverty within most parts of Pakistan as well. And so it's a ripe area for theocratic militarism because the militants can come to them and say, hey, look at these rich people over in Karachi. Look at you now living in a mud brick house. Why don't you join us? You'll have 10 times as much money because we can take out contract hits. We can run drugs. You should plow out your cotton field here and grow opium. You'll make more money. And it works. It happens in Afghanistan all the time. Basically what happened there. If you look at pictures of Kabul from the 70s, it looks like a developed area. Of course, that's only part of Kabul, even Kabul at the time. But that was completely erased by the Taliban. They were only able to do that because they found a lot of fertile ground for their message among people who were downtrodden. The problem is within Pakistan, you could have the same thing, and they're a nuclear state. India would almost certainly invade the next day if militants were to try to actually take control of Pakistan. They'd be right to do so, by the way. It'd be a joint invasion with the U.S., I guarantee that. Hell, Iran would probably invade at that point just to prevent them from nuking them off the face of the earth because they happen to be Shia instead of Sunni or something. By the way, the largest Zoroastrian community in the world, about 10,000 people, is in Pakistan. They're persecuted, but they're still there. For how many more generations, who knows? Thankfully, there are also some Canadian Zoroastrians, so there's a core of their faith will remain even once they're wiped out in Central Asia. Here's the problem, though. There is one negative part to this story. That is, saving $300 million and not giving it to a terrorist-sponsoring nation is really good. Unfortunately, the way the Pentagon's money works, what happens is Congress gives them a certain amount of money. They ask, we need, $100 billion. They don't even have to mark what it's for. And so the problem is, this $300 million should go towards, giving every taxpayer $2 rebate. That'd be funny. Go buy a fucking single chocolate bar or a cup of coffee at this point. It's really funny. It's like 85 cents for a Hershey bar now. When I was little, it was like 50 cents. No, literally, inflation is that bad. That's not a long span of time. I'm not exactly an old man, if you know what I'm saying. It's not going to go towards building some infrastructure project. It's not even going to go towards, an actual... It's going to go towards whatever the Pentagon wants it for. And it'll probably be for killing people because it is the Pentagon. Or they'll squirrel it away. They'll lose it like they lose billions of dollars every single fucking year. We don't know where it went. No, it's highly classified though, so you can't know where it's going. And so it's really going into the pockets of some arms dealer or maybe, some janitor at the Pentagon's like, no, yeah, I overheard your secret conversation. Maybe you should pay me a six-figure sum. I want to go and take a 2-week vacation in Tahiti. Now, I promise I won't say anything, but I'm going to need a little bit of something to shut me up, basically. I think that's how things work at the Pentagon. I think it's a marvelous culture of corruption. I think it's terrible. But yeah, Pakistan shouldn't be getting my aid. Now, I like this. Of course, the idea of paying less to foreign countries. I would get rid of all foreign aid. Honestly, Pakistan's a major recipient, but it's not the largest. I think the two largest are Israel and Egypt, if I remember correctly. Pakistan, I think, is number 3. I think. But here's the thing. I wouldn't give foreign aid to any of them. Look, we have a deficit in this country. We are not making as much money as we're spending. Until such time as that is solved, I think there should be a constitutional amendment forcing Congress to pass a balanced budget. And I think that there should also be a cap on the tax rate to force them to cut spending. I think it'd be a wonderful country if they did that. The tax rate should be far lower than it is right now. There's no real reason for it. We're capable of making ends meet, paying for everything, maintaining order, and having a civilized, westernized, first world society with half the tax rate that we currently have. And in fact, we'd have far more development if we were to just slash taxes massively and slash spending accordingly. I think that a balanced budget is necessary. It should be, our fiscal house needs to be in order before we can help people around the world. That's just the way that it is. Hell, we subsidize all this grain and then we ship a bunch of it to Africa and keep nations poor by saying, oh, fuck your local farmers, we're going to give you free food. By the way, I thought up an interesting solution. This has nothing to do with Pakistan per se. You know how we give food aid, like relief packets and grain and stuff to, certain nations? They get a famine. We prop them up with food aid. The problem is that their farmers can't compete with free, and so the people just stop farming, and then the famine becomes permanent. What should be done is we should spray down that grain with something that makes it taste terrible. It's edible, it's perfectly safe to eat, but it tastes like shit, so that the farmers can grow something that's not terrible tasting, and therefore there will actually be a reason why people would pay a little bit for that farm produce. Have we thought about that possibility, and then we can pay the farmers to plant their initial crops so they don't have to worry about seed prices or whatever? If we did that, we could get these nations to stop relying upon the U.S. teat. The problem is, of course, we need to put that surplus grain somewhere. We can only add so much to our fuel, and so we would have this huge amount of produce that just rots in the fields if it weren't for the fact that we were basically feeding, 500 million people around the world for free. It's actually interesting, the economics of farming. Very, very strange. We almost are too good at producing food. We should probably rethink this situation. But no, I wouldn't give Pakistan a penny, and I would freeze the aid forever until there's no longer a deficit. Until year over year we have a balanced budget, or our debt is decreasing, we have a surplus. Until such time as that happens, I'd say, sorry, the U.S. can't give you aid. Ask China. See if China will give you free money. It'll be very, very funny when you are begging them for a handout. That's about all. Peace out.